The Galactic Council's chambers loomed like a monolith of power, their towering spires piercing the heavens of the capital planet, Zorith. For millennia, the Council had ruled with an iron fist, their authority unchallenged, their judgment unquestioned. They were the arbiters of justice, the keepers of peace, and the enforcers of order across 1,000 star systems. But today, their pristine halls echoed with unease. The woman stood in the center of the interrogation room, her wrists bound by shimmering energy cuffs. She was unremarkable at first glance. Average height, her features neither striking nor plain, her dark hair falling in loose waves around her shoulders. Her clothing was simple, the kind worn by settlers on the galaxy's fringe. Yet, there was something about her that unsettled the Council's enforcers. It wasn't her appearance. It was her presence. She radiated calm, an almost unnatural serenity that made the air around her feel heavier, charged. The interrogator, a high-ranking officer named Valen, leaned across the table, his 4 eyes narrowing as he studied her. "You've been charged with violating Galactic Law Section 47A, unauthorized use of restricted technology. How do you plead?" The woman tilted her head, her gaze steady. "I don't recognize your authority." Valen's lips curled into a sneer. "Your recognition is irrelevant. The Council's authority is absolute. Now, answer the question." She smiled faintly, a flicker of amusement in her eyes. "You should be careful, Valen. Absolute power has a way of blinding those who wield it." The room fell silent. The other enforcers exchanged uneasy glances. Valen straightened, his voice sharp. "Do you think your defiance impresses us? You're nothing but a criminal, a speck in the grand scheme of the galaxy." The woman's smile didn't waver. "And yet, here I am, standing in the heart of your empire, surrounded by your best enforcers. Tell me, Valen, does that make you feel powerful or vulnerable?" Valen's hand twitched toward the disruptor pistol at his side, but he stopped himself. He had interrogated countless criminals, from smugglers to warlords, but none had ever spoken to him like this. There was no fear in her, no desperation, only quiet confidence. The interrogation continued for hours, but the woman revealed nothing. She answered questions with cryptic remarks, her words laced with hints of knowledge that sent shivers down Valen's spine. She spoke of forgotten wars, of secrets buried deep in the Council's archives, of a time before the Council's reign. Each word was a puzzle piece, and Valen couldn't shake the feeling that she was leading him toward a revelation he wasn't ready to face. When the interrogation ended, the woman was taken to a high-security cell deep within the Council's prison. The cell was designed to hold the galaxy's most dangerous criminals, its walls reinforced with energy-dampening fields. Yet, as the guards sealed the door, they couldn't shake the feeling that the cell was more like a cage for a predator than a prison for a prisoner. That night, strange phenomena began to occur. The lights in the cell flickered, casting eerie shadows on the walls. The energy-dampening fields fluctuated, their hum rising and falling like a heartbeat. The guards reported hearing whispers, though no one was there. And through it all, the woman sat calmly in the center of the cell, her eyes closed as if in meditation. The Council convened an emergency meeting. "Who is she?" demanded Counselor Zorith, his voice booming through the chamber. "How does she know about the war? About the archives?" "We don't know," Valen admitted, his voice tight with frustration. "Her identity is a mystery, but she's dangerous. More dangerous than we realized." Counselor Lyra, the youngest and most pragmatic of the Council, leaned forward. "We need to tread carefully. If she knows about the war, she could expose everything. The galaxy cannot know the truth." "Then we silence her," Zorith said, his tone final. "Permanently." Lyra's eyes narrowed. "And if she's more than she appears? If she's one of them?" The room fell silent. The word hung in the air, unspoken but understood. Them. The ones who had fought in the war, the ones who had been erased from history, the ones who were supposed to be extinct. Before the Council could reach a decision, an alarm blared through the chamber. The woman's cell was compromised. The energy-dampening fields had failed, and the guards reported seeing a strange glow emanating from within. The council rushed to the prison, their fear mounting with every step. When they reached the cell, they found the woman standing in the center, her cuffs shattered at her feet. The air around her shimmered with an otherworldly light, and her eyes glowed with a power that made the counselors step back in awe. "You should have left me alone," she said, her voice echoing with a resonance that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. "But now that you've brought me here, I think it's time you remembered who I am." The counselors exchanged horrified glances. They had made a grave mistake, and they knew it. The woman wasn't just a criminal. She was something far more dangerous, a relic of a forgotten age, a living reminder of the council's darkest secrets. And she was just getting started. The council's archives were a labyrinth of secrets, a sprawling network of data vaults buried deep beneath the capital city. Few were permitted access, and even fewer knew the full extent of what lay within. But now, as the counselors gathered in the dimly lit chamber, the weight of their own history pressed down on them like a suffocating shroud. Counselor Lyra stood at the center of the room, her slender fingers dancing across the holographic interface as she pulled up fragmented records from the ancient war. The images flickered to life, battleships engulfed in flames, planets reduced to ash, and a figure cloaked in light, standing at the heart of the chaos. The woman from the cell. "This can't be her," Zorith muttered, his voice tinged with disbelief. "She's a myth, a legend. She was supposed to have died centuries ago." Lyra's eyes narrowed as she zoomed in on the figure. And yet, here she is, alive. And if she's who we think she is, then we're in far more trouble than we realized. The woman's name was Dr. Ilara Voss, a scientist and warrior who had once been hailed as the galaxy's greatest hope. She had led the resistance against the Void Wraiths, an ancient and malevolent force that had threatened to consume the galaxy. Her brilliance and her powers had turned the tide of the war, but her methods had been controversial, her sacrifices too great. When the war ended, the Council had betrayed her, sealing her powers and exiling her to a forgotten planet. They had erased her from history, rewriting the narrative to paint themselves as the saviors. "We thought she was gone," Lyra said, her voice barely above a whisper. "We thought we were safe." "Safe?" Valen snapped, his frustration boiling over. "She's in our prison, and she's breaking out of it as we speak. We're not safe. We're sitting targets." The counselors fell silent, the weight of their predicament settling over them. They had spent centuries building their empire on lies, and now those lies were unraveling before their eyes. The woman Ilara was a living reminder of their betrayal, and her return threatened to expose everything. In the prison, Ilara stood in the center of her cell, her eyes closed as she focused on the energy coursing through her. The council's dampening fields had been a nuisance, but they were no match for her. She had spent centuries in exile, her powers suppressed, but now they were returning, stronger than ever. The memories of the war flooded back, the battles, the sacrifices, the betrayal. She had given everything to save the galaxy, and the council had repaid her with exile. She opened her eyes, the glow intensifying as she reached out with her mind. The walls of the cell trembled, the energy fields flickering and failing. The guards outside scrambled to contain her, but it was too late. With a surge of power, she shattered the walls, stepping into the corridor beyond. The guards raised their weapons, but Ilara raised a hand, and the weapons disintegrated into dust. "Stand down," she said, her voice calm but commanding. "I have no quarrel with you, but if you try to stop me, I won't hesitate." The guards hesitated, their fear palpable. They had been trained to handle the galaxy's most dangerous criminals, but this was something else entirely. This was power beyond their comprehension. Ilara moved through the prison with purpose, her every step resonating with authority. She didn't need to fight. Her presence alone was enough to clear a path. The prisoners watched in awe as she passed, some whispering her name, others bowing their heads in reverence. She was a legend, a myth come to life, and her return signaled the beginning of something monumental. When she reached the council's chambers, the doors exploded inward, shattering into 1,000 pieces. The counselors turned, their faces pale with fear as she stepped inside. Her gaze swept over them, lingering on each one before settling on Zorith. "You," she said, her voice cold. "You were there, weren't you? At the end of the war. You were the one who gave the order." Zorith swallowed hard, his bravado crumbling under her scrutiny. I did what I had to do. For the galaxy." "For the galaxy?" Alara's voice was laced with venom. "You betrayed me. You betrayed all of us. And for what? Power? Control?" Lyra stepped forward, her hands raised in a gesture of peace. "Alara, please. We can explain. We can make this right." Alara's eyes flicked to Lyra, and for a moment, there was a flicker of something softer. Pity, perhaps, or regret. But it was gone as quickly as it appeared. "You had your chance to make things right. You chose lies instead. And now the galaxy will know the truth." She raised her hand, and the chamber's holographic displays came to life, broadcasting her message across every system in the galaxy. The counselors watched in horror as their secrets were laid bare. The war, the betrayal, the lies. The galaxy would see them for what they truly were. As the broadcast ended, Alara turned to leave, but Zoritha's voice stopped her. "You think this changes anything? The galaxy needs order. Without us, it will descend into chaos." Alara paused, her back to him. "The galaxy doesn't need tyrants. It needs truth. And if chaos is the price of freedom, then so be it." With that, she walked out of the chamber, leaving the counselors to face the fallout of their actions. The galaxy was watching, and the seeds of revolution had been sown. The section ends with Alara stepping into the streets of the capital city, her presence igniting a spark of hope among the oppressed. The council's empire was crumbling, and the galaxy was on the brink of change. But as Alara disappeared into the crowd, a single thought lingered. This was only the beginning. The capital city of Zorith was in chaos. News of the council's betrayal had spread like wildfire, igniting protests and riots across the planet. The streets were filled with the cries of the oppressed, their anger boiling over after centuries of silence. The council's enforcers struggled to maintain order, but their authority was crumbling, their once unshakable grip on power slipping away. Alara moved through the crowds with purpose, her presence a beacon of hope for those who had long suffered under the council's rule. People reached out to her, their voices trembling with gratitude and awe. She was a living legend, the woman who had exposed the council's lies and given them a chance at freedom. But Alara's mind was elsewhere. She knew the council would not go down without a fight, and she needed to prepare for what was coming. In the council's chambers, the atmosphere was tense. Zorith paced the room, his face twisted with rage. "This is unacceptable. We cannot let her destroy everything we've built." Lyra sat at the table, her expression grim. "We brought this on ourselves, Zorith. We betrayed her, and now we're paying the price." "Enough!" Zorith slammed his fist on the table. "I won't let her undo centuries of progress. If she wants a war, then we'll give her one." Lyra's eyes narrowed. "And how do you propose we fight her? She's more powerful than anything we've ever faced. Our weapons, our technology, none of it will work against her." Zoritha's lips curled into a sneer. "There's always a way. We just need to think like her." Meanwhile, Alara had reached the outskirts of the city, where a group of rebels had gathered. They were a ragtag bunch, former soldiers, scientists, and civilians who had been inspired by her message. Among them was a young man named Kale, whose family had been killed by the council's enforcers. He stepped forward, his eyes filled with determination. "We're ready to fight," he said. "Just tell us what to do." Alara studied him for a moment, then nodded. "The council will come for us. They'll try to crush this rebellion before it gains momentum. We need to be ready." She spent the next few hours organizing the rebels, teaching them how to use the council's own technology against them. Her knowledge of their systems was unparalleled, and she quickly turned their makeshift camp into a fortress. But even as she worked, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The council was too quiet, too still. They were planning something, and she needed to find out what. That night, as the rebels prepared for battle, Alara slipped away from the camp. She moved through the shadows, her senses heightened as she searched for answers. It didn't take long to find them. The council had deployed a fleet of warships, their weapons trained on the city. But that wasn't what worried her. What worried her was the massive energy signature coming from the council's headquarters. A signature she recognized all too well. The Void Wraiths. Alara's heart sank. The council had done the unthinkable. They had awakened the very force they had once fought to destroy. The Void Wraiths were beings of pure energy, capable of consuming entire planets. They had been sealed away at the end of the war, their existence erased from history. But now they were free, and the council was using them as a weapon. Alara returned to the camp, her mind racing. She gathered the rebels and explained the situation. The council has unleashed the Void Wraiths. If we don't stop them, they'll destroy everything. Kale's face paled. How do we fight something like that? We don't, Alara said. Not directly, but we can stop the council from controlling them. If we take out their command center, the Wraiths will turn on them. The rebels nodded, their fear replaced by determination. They knew the stakes, and they were willing to fight for their future. The battle began at dawn. The rebels launched their attack on the council's headquarters, their makeshift weapons no match for the Enforcer's advanced technology. But they had something the council didn't. Alara. She moved through the battlefield like a force of nature, her powers cutting through the enemy lines with ease. The Enforcers fell back, their confidence shattered. As the rebels fought their way to the command center, Alara confronted Zorith and Lyra. The two counselors stood at the heart of the chaos, their faces filled with desperation. It's over, Alara said. Surrender, and I'll spare your lives. Zorith laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. You think this is about us? This is about the galaxy, about order. You can't win, Alara. The Void Wraiths will consume everything. Alara's eyes hardened. Then I'll stop them, just like I did before. She raised her hand, and the energy in the room surged. The Void Wraiths, drawn to her power, turned their attention to the command center. Zorith's eyes widened in horror as the Wraiths descended, their forms swirling with destructive energy. No, he screamed. You'll kill us all. Alara's voice was calm. If that's what it takes. With a final surge of power, she destroyed the command center, severing the council's control over the Wraiths. The beings turned on the counselors, their energy consuming everything in their path. Zorith and Lyra were gone in an instant, their screams echoing through the chamber. The Void Wraiths, now free, began to disperse, their energy fading into the void. The galaxy was safe, but the cost had been high. The council was gone, their empire in ruins. The rebels stood amidst the wreckage, their faces filled with a mix of relief and sorrow. Alara stepped forward, her gaze sweeping over the survivors. The fight isn't over. The galaxy needs leaders who will guide it, not control it. It's up to you to build a better future. Kale nodded, his voice steady. We'll do it. For everyone who didn't make it. Alara placed a hand on his shoulder. I know you will. As the rebels began to rebuild, Alara turned and walked away. Her work here was done, but she knew her journey wasn't over. The galaxy was vast, and there were still those who needed her help. She disappeared into the stars, a legend once more. Her story a beacon of hope for generations to come. The galaxy would remember her, not as a myth, but as the woman who had given them a chance at freedom. And though she was gone, her legacy would endure, a reminder that even in the darkest times, there was always hope.